Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
You know, class, there are a lot of things that I should get done before the broadcast. And today I didn't get any of them done. None of them. So I didn't update our Facebook page with all the details of this morning's broadcast. And just so many things I did not get done. But I'll do that during the broadcast. I'm delighted to be broadcasting with my dear friend, Kurt Wilson. And Kurt Wilson is a broadcaster. And he's going to tell you about his broadcast in just a couple of minutes. But, you know, I love talking off the air with Kurt Wilson. But the problem is we don't get enough chances and times that line up with our schedules to do that. So I thought, you know what? I'll just talk to him on the air. So what you're going to hear in the next 2 hours are the kind of conversations that Kurt Wilson and I have off the air. But we're going to do it on the air. Welcome, Kurt Wilson.
Hey, Vinny, what's happening?
Well, did I say that right? We don't get a chance to talk as much as we'd like to, you know, on the phone. So we're just going to do it on the air.
Yeah, you call me to talk, and I'm like, Vinny, sorry, I got this fire I got to put out. And I call you, and your wife says, he can't come out and play right now, Kurt. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, speaking of putting out fires, you're not kidding. I called you one day, and we talked about, hey, you know, so what's happening? What are you up to? And it's like, the smoke is so thick. And we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. Kurt, I wanted to share a story with you. It really bothers me. And, you know, there's stories that you read that bother you and me. And here's one that I've been talking about, this kind of thing happening. And fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. But when it does, it's really serious. So let me give you some prep to the story. So I took my class back in the 1990s to Atlanta, Georgia, from Virginia to Atlanta, Georgia, to go to the largest consumer electronics show in the country, the CES, Consumer Electronics Show, in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I chartered this bus, and I sat in the front of the bus. We left in the afternoon, and we were driving throughout the night, and I was up in the front to make sure the bus driver didn't fall asleep and get us all killed. So I was talking to him, and what I saw in the early morning hours was we're on the interstate, and a tractor-trailer tire and rim crossed the median toward us and was bouncing along the median and crossed right in front of our bus. Now, we're talking about a tire that it would take tire and rim that would take two guys to lift. It's that heavy. And this thing was going, initially maybe 70 miles an hour, and it would, you know, it was slowing down. Maybe by the time it crossed in front of the bus, and I'm talking like, you know, maybe 50, 60, something feet like that. Maybe it was going 50 miles an hour. But if we hit that darn thing, it would have caused a horrendous crash. Fortunately, it crossed in between all the cars and trucks that were going our direction, and it ended up in the pullover area on the right side of the road. Okay, so that, you know, I saw that happen. So we'll now go to the story I read this morning just before the broadcast, and here's the headline, DailyMail.com. Woman, 49, is killed by a flying tire on her way to work in Atlanta. So this woman was in Georgia. She was driving north on Georgia 400 near Atlanta. And police say that the large tire unexpectedly flew off the truck being driven by George, Jorge, Herrera, Herrara, before smashing into this woman's car. Now, and there's a wheel and tire assembly. I looked at the pictures, and it looks like if this were a Ford pickup truck, it'd be an F-250 or an F-350. If it were a Dodge, it'd be a 2500 or 3500. This is a four-wheel drive pickup truck, heavy-duty pickup truck, and the wheel and tire assembly came off the rear. Now, I'm looking at the disc caliper and rotor in this picture, and it looks like the wheel studs are all there. So it's not like the wheel broke off. It's not like the axle came apart. It's not like the rotor came apart. It's not like the wheel bearings came apart. It looks like the lug nuts that hold this wheel and tire assembly onto the axle came loose. Now, it also looks to me like the disc of the rear disc brakes are worn in such a way as the vehicle was not properly maintained. Okay? So there was a wear pattern of neglect, in my opinion, if this is the right vehicle that I'm looking at the picture of. Well, this tire and assembly flew off this pickup truck and landed behind the pickup truck, and it hit right at the point where the top of the windshield meets the roof line, almost in the center of the vehicle, caved in the windshield, caved in the roof, and killed the driver. Now, it's really tragic, but there's a lesson to be learned here. And, Kurt, let me tell you what we do. We have a torque wrench. Actually, we have a couple torque wrenches, half-inch drive torque wrenches. And we torque every single wheel that we dismount. And we put it back on the vehicle, and we torque it with a torque wrench to the proper specifications that the manufacturer recommends. And we look, when we get in our vehicles, we walk around them. No matter where we are, whether we're at a parking lot, whether we are at the farm, before we get in any vehicle, we look around the vehicle, we do a walk around, and we look under them to make sure there are no dogs sleeping and chickens and cats and those kinds of things sleeping. Make sure there's no obstructions. Make sure nobody put a pail or a bucket or a board or something that, you might not see if you're backing up a vehicle. We do a walk around just to make sure. And we look at the wheels, and we even sometimes thump the tires with like a equivalent of a tire iron, because you can tell whether the tires are low just by looking at them. And you can verify that they're low by thumping.
A pre-flight check.
Pre-flight check. Yes. Yeah. Good point. So what I'm trying to say is these things can be prevented. Now, I've mentioned on this class that you have to be careful of parts flying off these 18-wheelers, because if they are in a situation where if they slam on the brakes and the brake drums get red hot, they can actually shatter. And a chunk of iron, like the size of a barbell weight, can come flying out from behind the truck and go right through your windshield. Well, that's kind of what happened to this woman, but it was a tire and a wheel that came off a truck. And I think that, and no charges were against the person behind the wheel of the pickup truck. No charges so far. However, how does this happen? Well, if the lug nuts are not tightened properly, if the wheel is out of balance, that could cause these lug nuts to come off just by the vibration. Now, how can you not feel...
Not just out of balance. See, here's the thing with lug nuts. And I actually, you look at the physics of this. So that was probably an eight lug wheel, if it's on a 3/4 or 1 ton pickup.
Yes.
And
yes.
What happens to people who are not competent? Now, this is the one word that escapes millennials perfectly, and too many other people. The term competence means ability of whole in ancient Latin, but that means that you perform a task to the best of your ability, not half-assed. Okay, so you got that. Now, a lot of times I've seen this, okay? People they jack a vehicle up, and they put a tire on it, and if the tire is off the ground and you're tightening the lug nuts, sometimes the tire will spin, right? The whole wheel will turn. So they'll lower it down just enough to where it doesn't spin, and then they'll tighten them up. So what happens is they're not seated properly, even though they use a half-inch socket and they torque the thing down with their hands, not with a torque wrench, but by their hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they go, it's on there tight. Okay, and then they lower it down, then they drive. After a couple hundred miles, the weight of the vehicle and the tire turning, the wheel turning, will recenter the tire in the lug nut slots, and it's already loose now at that point, and then just continue. And here's what people do, and you're going to say, yep, you're right. People drive along in their vehicle, and they hear a sound, a strange sound, and they go, oh, I hear a strange sound. And that's it. They don't stop and go, what the hell's going on? They don't stop and check things. So they keep driving. And I see this with women all the time, you know. I don't know, there's a funny light on my dash. It popped up about a week ago. What does it say? Check engine, you know, or low on water, or oil pressure low. They see this thing, this warning, and they ignore it. It's an integrity thing, personal integrity.
And lack of knowledge. I know a guy who was coming to visit me, and the oil light came on his truck. And he thought, well, he was on the interstate. He thought, well, there's an exit up there, a few miles ahead. And he thought he'd pull over there. And what happened, by the time he got there, the engine was blown from being out of oil. And so he initially thought that the check engine or check oil light, or the oil indicator light, meant that now's the time to, the oil might be a little low. Might be a little low, just, kind of look at it. And it cost him, I was able to find a used engine for this vehicle. And it was like $1,350 at the time. And that was a pretty expensive lesson. Mm-hmm. But the engine warning system came on and said, there's a problem. Now, before that, what you could do is check the oil like once a week. Saturdays, Sundays, they happen every week. And that might be good.
Every time you put gas in, you should check your oil and visual levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Raise that hood, check the coolant, check the belts, check the oil, check to see if there's corrosion on the battery. I'll tell you what, power steering fluid, transmission fluid, it can save you a lot of trouble. Kurt Wilson's with us this morning, and his website, se1.us. Kurt, and you're a broadcaster. You're on affiliates, you're on satellite, and you've been doing this for years. Would you please tell us how we can listen to you this weekend?
Oh, it's easy. Go to armchairsurvivalist.com. There's a bunch of different ways. I'm on satellite. I'm on shortwave. There's even an app for me. One of my good listeners and customers, I tried to make an app, okay, and it ended up getting taken over by banner ads and all of this garbage. So he took pity on me and he made an app that no ads, no nothing. Just go to your app store and look for Armchair Survivalist, and you'll find me. But it's armchairsurvivalist.com. I'm on Sundays, 2 to 4 Pacific time, and it's real easy. I'm easy. You can listen to me in all kinds of different ways.
And Kurt, please share with us some of the things that you talk about. What are some of the topics?
Well, see, I have 2 hours. That's it. So what I do is I'm an investigative journalist, a real one, not this fluff fake news that is existing out there. So I have 2 hours, right? You get more news from me in 1 hour than you're going to get from anyone else the whole week. And then in the second hour, I talk about stuff that can help you. My viewpoint is this: when the Schumer hits the fan, you're not going to be in your bunker up in the mountains, surrounded by 10 years of freeze-dried food and gold and silver and all this stuff. You're going to be sitting in front of your TV with a beer in your hand, going, "What the hell happened? The electricity's off." So I teach people how to exist in a more optimum state where they are. Let me give you an idea. I have a link on my site. It says show notes. And let's see, history of Israel and Jews, taking care of leather, vacuuming stuff, chemtrails, Lugol's iodine, how to communicate, stupid things people do, personal initiative, Islam, enemy of the world. This is titles of different ones. Water and electric conservation, non-electric heating, how to insulate for winter, and that's an important one, guys. If you don't, yesterday, two real nice people came in the store, And because we have a store, it's Survival Enterprises in Hayden, Idaho. They came in the store, and they just moved up here from California. So I said, he was asking for help. He wanted to know things, okay? And I said, okay, so you're from Southern California, so obviously you don't know what insulation is. He goes, no. So in an hour, I taught him how to insulate his house because it gets cold up here. And this is going to be a wet, cold winter. So these are the things that people should learn. And this is, and you know, I mentioned, you were talking about the tire thing, and I said it's a matter of incompetence, and you said and ignorance. And you're right. That's why I try and give people as much information as I can so that they can be more in control of their life and their security and their safety. And you do the same thing. So it's people like you and me and others that actually care more about people than about making ourselves more powerful, you know, blathering.
Yeah.
So and that's it. That's what I do, and that's what you do.
Yeah. ArmchairSurvivalist.com. ArmchairSurvivalist.com. That's Kurt Wilson. So, Kurt, you know, when we talk, we jog each other's memories. And as you were talking about this guy from Southern California, it reminded me of a friend of mine. And this friend called me up one day, and he said it was last winter. It was really cold. It was, maybe 10, 12, 14 degrees outside. And he said that he was having some work done on his farmhouse, and he had a contractor there, and water was coming out of the ceiling. And it was gushing. I mean, it was a real gusher coming out of the ceiling. And so I told him I had been to his farmhouse, and I told him where to shut the water off and those kinds of things. And so we started talking about it. I said, "Can you get up in the crawl space or the attic there, and can you get up through the scuttle hole and take a look?" And he did, and he saw that what the guy did was he ran PEX plumbing in the attic on top of the insulation across from one end of the farmhouse to the other. Now, who in their right mind would do that? Well, hardly anybody, especially in our neck of the woods where it gets cold, especially where you are in Idaho. But the contractor, he just came up from Florida. And that's probably pretty common there. Well, the water in the PEX plumbing line froze, burst the connections, and it took down some ceilings. We'll be right back. Kurt Wilson's with us, and, you know, we're talking about things that can be prevented. And I've been thinking about this, you know, particular vehicle, this pickup truck, and the wheel came off. You know, I just can't imagine 8 lug nuts getting looser and looser and looser, and the person behind the wheel not feeling it, not saying, you know, this thing really feels kind of, you know, odd. There's a wobble in the drivetrain, and the person behind the wheel not saying, let me pull over right now before something bad happens. I can't imagine that not being felt, you know, the vibration of this loose wheel. Because when you back out these lug nuts, they can be backed out about 3/4 of an inch before they come off. And there's 8 of them that hold a wheel on. So that was one thought. Kurt, and that ties with what you were saying. Also, why are these things happening? Well, one reason, I believe, is we don't have service stations anymore. We used to have these filling stations that would have a mechanic, typically on duty. And maybe it's one guy. Maybe it's a guy who pumps the gas and changes the oil and checks the car and replaces brakes and those kinds of things. I used to be that guy. I used to be a one-man band at a service station back in the 1970s when I was in right after high school. I was that guy, pumping gas and replacing brakes and fixing air conditioning systems and changing oil and those kinds of things. And it was my job to look over the vehicles of the people who were getting gasoline. I would say, would you like me to check under the hood? And I'd look under the hood and I'd check the oil, and engine oil. I'd check I'd look at the cooling system to see if it seemed like it needed to be topped off. But I wouldn't take the cap off because it's under pressure and you could get burned very badly from that. I would check power steering fluid, those kinds of things. I would do a walk around. And we don't do that anymore. Now it's you fill up your own tank and get on your way, right? And the other thing that's missing from the equation is the weekend mechanics. The guys who would raise the hoods of their vehicles every weekend on Saturday. They'd wash the car, check it, maybe replace the muffler, whatever it needed. Change the spark plugs, do a tune-up, points, condenser, rotor cap, those kinds of things. That's what we used to do. But you don't see that anymore because for a lot of reasons. Kurt, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Here's the problem, is that 100 years ago, we were responsible for ourselves. 50 years ago, we were responsible for ourselves. So when something went wrong, I mean, hell, I was in high school going to automotive class, and there were half the class was women, were girls, because they wanted to know what to do in case their car had some little minor screw up. And it was, it was accepted that if you're going to take your car to get a brake job at a place, they're going to screw you and charge you a lot of money because it's a mystery. That's the thing. It's a mystery what they do. But if it's no longer a mystery, well, then you can't get ripped off. And it was for all facets of life. We were taught how to clean a house. We were taught, and I mean clean a house. Mm-hmm. We were taught how to clean. We were taught how to take care of our car. We were taught that we didn't have garbage, our personal belongings piled up. It's a joke in the cartoons where you see a teenager's room and it's just dirty clothes piled in the corner. That's a joke. That's a cartoon. That wasn't real life, because we all had places that we kept our stuff because we were taught to. And there's reasons that we were taught these things, and we didn't argue. It was like, you don't pile your dirty clothes up because spiders crawl underneath them and live that way. So we were taught we were taught firearm safety. We were taught to respect our clothing. I mean, can you believe that? We were taught how to respect our clothing and our shoes.
Absolutely, because it cost money, and money was scarce. You're talking about the tail end of the Depression.
You bet. Every year for school, Mom would take us to Sears, and I would get 3 pair of 501 blue jeans for $5 a pair, and that was my school clothes. And we were taught how to sew. We were taught how to wash clothes and dry clothes. We were taught how to take care of ourselves, you see. But as society changed, it got a little more difficult for us to both make a living and perform all the tasks that we needed to do to take care of ourselves. So instead of every Saturday popping the hood, checking things out, gluing some weather stripping back on that fell off or whatever on your car and making sure it's ready for the next week, we'd take it to some shop to do this for us, and they charge $180 for a complete checkup. Mm-hmm. And yes, that's a lot of money, but you know what? We didn't have to do it. We could spend more time watching TV or going out to some movie or something. And so it just started changing. Now you have a class of people called millennials. Like my grandpa used to say, they couldn't pour piss out of a boot with the instructions on the heel. These not all of them, and I hate to use generalities, and I don't, but the millennial race creatures right now, they can't do anything. They can't cook. They couldn't cook an egg. Why? Because they don't cook. They go out to eat, always. Mm-hmm. They don't know anything about their car. They know how to lock it and unlock it because they have a remote control. But the sad thing is they also have these phones that they shove their head firmly up its orifice and put all their attention on this phone while they're driving. I mean, that's everybody knows that. The segments of society, not all of society, segments of society are willing to subvert the teachings of sanity and reality for the joy of the new digital age. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And this is what we see.
When I was teaching public high school in Virginia, I took it upon myself to rewrite the curriculum for high school. Now, I'm just some guy, right? And I decided I don't really think we're doing this right. I think we need to rewrite the curriculum, and there's nobody to do it, so I did it. I didn't ask for permission. I just rewrote it. And what I wrote into the curriculum was a business series of classes and subject matter. And that subject matter included principles of insurance, principles of banking, principles of interest, ethics, morals, okay, how money works. There's just a few of the things in the business part of the education that these children would be learning in high school. And I presented this written document to the superintendent of schools for that particular county. And I was shot down. It's like, we're not going to do that. Now, instead of doing that, and this I hope doesn't seem racist, but I'm going to say it anyway. We spent time learning about black history. Now, I think it's fine to learn about history, the way it really happened, but not, if we're going to do black history, let's do Indian history, okay? Let's do all of the immigrants that came to this country. Let's do, them one at a time. And we could probably accomplish that in maybe 10 or 15 years. But since we only have 4 years for high school, let's just teach history, what really happened, including the blacks and the Indians and the immigrants. But let's weave that in on a timeline, the way it really happened.
Yeah,
I'm all
now
for
we're getting
that.
into it. Now we're getting into UNESCO, and we're getting into how the UN, starting in the 50s, started creating the guidelines for schools so that we would be more tolerant and less white and less American. Do you know?
Well, I'll tell you how intolerant I was. So in one of the schools where I was teaching, in the library, they had these little statues of people, and they were in this window, and it's probably like 20 feet long of these 1 foot tall statues of people I didn't recognize. And I looked at them, I looked at one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and I didn't recognize any of these people. Now, these were allegedly really famous people that I should, look up to and respect, but I never heard of them. So I said to the librarian, I walked up to her, I'd see her every time I went into the building, which is, like every day. And I went up to the librarian and I said, this guy right here, this statue, is he a guy that stood next to someone who stood next to someone who stood next to someone who actually did something? Is that why is that why this statue is here? Because he stood next to someone who did something? And this is back in the 90s. So why are we wasting time with this?
It is part of the plan. Okay, do you know what UNESCO is?
Please share with us,
all right.
Give our whole class a thumbnail sketch of UNESCO.
You have the UN, but the UN had decided that we cannot have a one-world government. And this is not just me. I'm not dramatizing this. This is almost verbatim. We're not going to accomplish a one-world government because children are being infected by their parents into nationalism and patriotism. So we have to destroy that. So we're going to create a group called the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. UNESCO is the organization that came up with Common Core. UNESCO is the organization that came up with John has two daddies, Mary has two mommies. UNESCO is the organization that came up with the idea, let's share every religion except Christianity and every history except whites and America. This is what UNESCO is. Now, I know all of this. I remember as a kid hearing about them, but Trump 2 weeks ago pulled us out of UNESCO. We're no longer under their control. They do a lot of different things. I did a whole show on it. But this is why you have the schools that are so insane, because every single teacher, not some, every single teacher who has tenure has to be trained at a UNESCO training academy.
Yeah, and it was formed in 1945.
Yep.
71 years ago. UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. We'll be right back. Kurt Wilson's with us. And I'll tell you about the guys whose pants are falling down when I saw them in the hallway in high school. I'll tell you what I did. Kurt Wilson's with us. Kurt, I used to be a computer consultant for a number of county school districts in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I spent a lot of time in two particular school districts, more time in those two than any other of the districts. And one of them, I was there almost every day. And when I was there, I would typically be carrying something down the hallway, and I would see students, and typically you'd see these young guys with their pants falling down. And I hated it. It really bothered me. I thought, gosh, this is ridiculous. Why would anybody do that? So what I decided to do was make the situation worse. And so as a teacher, I would have typically khaki slacks on, leather shoes or boots, leather boots, a leather belt, a long sleeve shirt, solid color, typically white with a tie, sports coat. That's how I dressed as a member of the faculty, because I was considered faculty as a computer consultant. And so I stood out from the way the students would dress. And whenever I saw one of these young guys with their pants falling down, I would say, I'm so glad you're here. Can you help me carry this? Would you carry this for me? So now here we got this dilemma. So here's a guy whose pants are falling down, and I give him something to carry that requires two hands. And he can't do it. He literally can't. I mean, he's shuffling down the hallway, trying to have his pants not fall down any farther, and carry this for me because I'm a member of the faculty and I asked him for some help. That's how I engaged the problem.
Do you know where that came from? Do you know what started that?
Prisons?
Yes. It started in prisons in California with the gang members. And these were the blacks and Mexicans, the Bloods and the Crips. They're not allowed belts. So if you've got a size 36 waist and you go into prison, within a few months you'll be a size 34, then a size 32.
Yeah.
And they were allowed shoestrings to hold their pants up, and you just, you tie it, the front two belt loops together, and that would hold your pants up. But these guys said, you know what, screw you. I'm a badass. So they let their pants hang and hang and hang, and it got to be it was a sign of I'm a thug, I'm a gangster.
Yeah.
I'm a
it works real well.
Yeah. And then it was just them. It was just them. But when these lowlifes got out of prison, they took this home, and well, we don't need to go into it, but it started passing through society and into all races.
Well, I remember walking into, I was teaching a class as a guest instructor one day, and I walked in and I saw some students with their pants falling down and really low, and so before I did anything, I just sat on the desk and I said, well, before we start, let's all gather around, let's get to know each other. So I introduced myself and I talked about what we're going to talk about in that class for that particular day, and I said, so if I want to be in style, if Mr. Finelli wants to be in style and, kind of look like some of you look, what do I do? Now, do I just go and buy pants that are maybe 6 sizes too large? Is that how I do it? Or do they make them that way? Is that the style that if you're 32 waist, you buy 32 pants, but they're actually so big 3 guys can fit in there? Or do you just buy them, 6 sizes too big? And he looked at me like, that's a really good question. How do we do this? And they realized that they really look sloppy. And I said, now, I don't always like to paint, but, sometimes I paint the house and I paint some rooms, and sometimes, I might even paint the outside of the house. Now, I'm trying to figure out how I could, be in style and paint the house, because my pants would be falling down with, almost every brush stroke. How do you do that? How would I apply for a job, looking like that as a painter? Could I get a summer job as a painter, all dressed up in style with my pants falling down? I don't think so. Kurt, we got another hour to go, and I want to tell you a story about Matthew Zulik. He's the CEO of Red Hat in North Carolina. I'll tell you what he and I came up with and what we did, and then I'll tell you what happened with the parents of my students. It's kind of shocking, and it indicates more reasons why we have the problems we have. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Kurt Wilson's with us, CEO of Survival Enterprises. And if you'd like to go to his website, it's SE as in Survival Enterprises. The number 1, SEVIVAL the number one, .us, S-E, the number one, .us. And if you'd like to listen to Kurt, Sundays from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time, 2 hours, Sundays, armchairsurvivalist.com, armchairsurvivalist.com. So, Kurt, I had been consulting for a number of school districts for years, and back in the 90s, and I had absolutely had it with Microsoft. I had it with them upgrading and coming out with new releases of Windows, and then Microsoft Office. So like every 18 months, the schools were buying new copies of software, new copies of Windows, the newest version, and the newest version of Microsoft Office. And I had absolutely had it. As a taxpayer, it bothered me. So let's talk about what we're talking about. So if Microsoft Windows cost $90 and Microsoft Office cost $90, that's $180 per computer every 18 months. Times 800 computers that we built for the school system. It's $144,000 every 18 months. So I'd had it. So I called up Red Hat. Red Hat is a company that is a very large distributor of Linux. So I called him up and I asked to talk to the CEO. His name is Matthew Zulik. And he and I talked, and I said, yeah, I'd like to come and meet you, and I've got a proposal for you. I'd like to drive down from Virginia and meet with you. Can we do it? And he said, sure. So I drove down in my truck, and we met. And we were sitting, now, he's the kind of guy that doesn't sit behind his big, tall desk and look down on, those who he's meeting with. He sits in chairs, and you sit knee to knee with them, which is pretty nice. You're equal footing with them. And so I explained to him what I really wanted to do is I wanted to be the first school district in the United States to throw overboard Microsoft. And I was willing to do it if he'd help me. And I said, what I need is I need a copy of all of your software for every one of our 800 computers. And that would be the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. And I need some consulting, training, and support. Someone on the end of the phone that we can call, who we can call to, get us past some problems when we encounter them. And he said, done, we'll do that. I said, okay. Then I called other companies who had support products for Linux. And there's a product called Wine, W-I-N-E. It stands for Wine is not an emulator. But it is an emulator. It emulates Windows. And so what we did was we put together the first public school system that had a dual boot computer network, Windows and Linux. And you press 1 for Windows, press 2 for Linux, or vice versa. When you boot the computer, it gives you a choice. And we had a Linux operating environment that looked just like Windows. We had an Office suite that looked just like Microsoft Office. And it ran all the DOS programs and all the Windows programs that we wanted. Then we implemented at the same time something called RHCE, which is Red Hat certification. And this is a college-level class that we implemented at the high school level. It would be like being a Microsoft certified engineer, but it was Red Hat certified engineer. And we implemented that at the high school. Now, so we put all this together, and it worked. And we deployed it throughout the county's educational computers. Now here's the whole point that I'm getting to. So this is pretty revolutionary stuff. No one had done this before. Nobody had kicked Microsoft to the curb in favor of Linux. So we saved a small fortune, and we didn't upgrade the computers to the latest version of Windows because we were going to Linux instead. Okay, Parent-Teacher Day. So I was teaching this advanced computer class with another guy from the school district, and it was working really well. And we're teaching RHCE as well as Linux and hardware and software, and it was a really cool classroom. It was fun, state of the art. And parent teachers, well, as a matter of fact, they said, okay, Vincent, what kind of arrangement do you want? What kind of desks and chairs? And I said, well, I really don't want any desks. What I'd like to do is have some kitchen counter. And I'd like to go around the perimeter of the room. And we designed our own bracket system that would mount on the wall that would hold the kitchen countertop just the same kind you buy at Lowe's or Home Depot, that kind of countertop, with a shelf above it. And we bolted it to the wall. This is what we did. We built our own classroom. And then we got just rolling chairs. So around the perimeter of the classroom was this countertop. And all the computers, I could see them when I taught class, because I was teaching from the center of the classroom, and the students were around the perimeter with their backs to me. I didn't need to see their faces. I needed to see their computer screens. And I could literally put on their screens whatever I had on my computer. We would push the images to their computer screens. We could say, okay, do this, watch this, see how this works. And we would show them on their screens, and they'd all look at their own screens. This was revolutionary back then. So we did all this. And we taught the students how to build computers. So parent-teacher night comes up, and there's no classes that day. Students are off. Parent-teacher night and day. 7 in the morning to 7 at night. So I was there, dressed in my standard uniform khakis, solid color shirt, white shirt, tie, sports coat. Not one single parent came to meet me. Not one. Not one. Let me say it a different way. Not one.
Well, of course not. Computers don't matter to them. Football did.
Well, I mean,
that'd be different.
Yeah, and here's what I don't understand. So when the students went home that night, and mom and dad said, "What'd you learn in school?" Hey, we built a computer. We built a computer. We changed the clock on the computer. We made it run faster. We made it run slower. We installed software. We installed network cards. We built a network right in the classroom, right in the middle of the classroom. We took these 8 computers, we built a file server, and we networked it, and we printed with it, from scratch. And, I would teach them all these really cool...
That's good. Did you learn anything today in school other than the playing around and computers? I know.
What I'm saying is parents have ignored their children. They had to have, because this is not something that the students weren't informed about. This is something where the parents knew, hey, Johnny's not going to be going to school today. Why is that? Oh, because it's the day the parents meet the teachers. But what I'm saying is, with all students that we've had, not one came in to say, hey, I've heard some things that you're doing in school. I have no idea what my son's talking about or my daughter's talking about, but they're really interested. Thanks very much. Nothing like that. So when you look at why we're in the mess we're in with these millennials, that's just one little component of it. Parents not caring.
Parents. Here's the thing: parents feel that it's not their job to raise their child, and the parents are taught that it's not your. It takes a what is it? It takes a
village.
Village to raise an idiot. It takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. Well, see, that's why the parents don't care. I've watched this. I've watched it. The parents just they drop. It's babysitting. They shoo the kid out of the front door at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and then their day is free. They don't have to worry about babysitting because the kid's at school being taught how diversity is a thing that you have to achieve. Mm-hmm. The problem is that, yes, there's a lot of propaganda. In fact, that's all the public schools are, is propaganda. It's a social experiment. But unfortunately, not all the kids going to school believe the crap. So what you have is fully programmed drones whose only goal in life is to work the drive-up window at McDonald's, or you have kids who have graduated not from their ability, but because the school district needs their seat. So they just graduate them. The kids can't even read, write, or add, or subtract. And these kids are angry at the world. They think the world owes them something. They're never going to achieve anything because the world is bad and sour, and all the old people are taking things from the young people. The standard communist hogwash. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you have
I saw
propaganda, and then you have the ones that have no goal in life. They have nothing. They have nothing. They've been all of their morals, ethics, integrity has been sucked out of their minds, and their parents said, "Well, I don't know where I went wrong."
One of the highlights in my day when I would consult for this particular school district that I was talking about, one of the highlights was after the last bell rang and the children would get on the bus. And And after the principal made all of his, end of the day announcements, those kinds of things, he would have a couple minutes of time to spend with me. And so I'd end up in his office every day that I was there, and he and I would chat. We'd chat about not about things that didn't matter. Talk about what I had done that day, what my plans were for the technology, how it's working, who needs to be involved, those kinds of things. I'm talking about business discussions. And one day he told me, I could see that he was frustrated. And I said, so what's up? And by the way, I've invited him to be on the broadcast, and he's declined so far because he'd probably get fired for saying anything about what really happened. But he said, you have no idea what this is like. And I said, well, tell me. He said, well, I've got this one student, and she would dress in this provocative attire, low cut, high cut, and he'd say, knock it off. And no matter what he did, it didn't work. So he had a meeting with the parents. The father comes in and he goes, hey, it's not my problem. From 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock, it's your problem. You fix it.
Yeah.
That's what the father said to the principal. So, class, I got an invitation to be a guest on a radio broadcast. And when is that broadcast? I'll be a guest on Dr. Bill Deagle's show today at 4 p.m. Central Time. So if you're a listener to Dr. Bill Deagle's broadcast, I'll be there. I'm his 4 o'clock guest, and I'll be talking about when the power goes out. I'll be helping you design an LED lighting system on the air. So that's 4 o'clock today, right here on Genesis Communications Network. Kurt, I wanted to share with you something that, we're putting some exclamation points on real stories. And so when I was teaching at one of these schools, I would work all weekend and I'd prepare what I thought was a great lesson, for Monday morning. So I'd work all weekend and I'd prepare this in my mind, which is really, really fun, really nice lesson. And I would bring my class to the library on Mondays, which the library wasn't used first period for most of the students. So I would take over the library. And I would have my students sit around the round library tables. So we'd have all the students, sitting in where we could all see each other around a round table. And we would discuss the material. And I would go from student to student to student in order, around the table. First question to first student, second question to second student. And there was this one guy there, young man, and he wore one of those, sometimes they call them pulpwoods. That's what the Virginia term is for a jersey with a hood. They call them pulpwood, or a hooded jacket. Okay, and this young man would have his head down, and he would have his hood over his head, and you couldn't see much of his face at all, if any of his face. He would have his head down, and when I'd get to him, I'd call on him, and eventually he would pop up his head and he'd go, Mr. Fanelli, you're picking on me because I'm black. And I said, well, no, that's really not true. I'm actually picking on you because it's your turn. And so, after weeks of this, I decided I better get some professional advice on how to handle this. So I met with my principal friend at the high school, the same guy I was talking about before, and I said, what would you like me to do? Because I can see this going two ways. One, I can give him the grade he deserves, and he's going to fail. Or I can pass him, which is not right because that's not going to help him in life. And the advice I got from the principal was, hey, Vinny, don't make the front page of the newspaper. Whatever you do, don't make the front page of the newspaper. And don't make the NAACP show up. That was the advice I got. Now, you know what that means? I'll tell you what that means. That means look the other way. It means, try your best. Don't call on him if he doesn't feel like being called on. If he doesn't feel like it's his turn, whether it is or isn't, don't cause any problems for him because he'll call his friends. The NAACP will show up, will be on the front page of the newspaper, and it'll take weeks to resolve this. It might even cost us money.
Yeah.
All because I'm trying to teach this young man the class material that he elected to be in that class. It was an election. It wasn't like it was required. He wanted to be there, allegedly. So that's the situation. And I don't think I'm the only guy that this happened to.
Did you pass him?
Well, I left that up to another teacher. I decided that I would leave that the grades. I turned over all the grades to another teacher. Let them handle it. Actually, what I would have done, I would have given him the grade he deserved. Okay, which would be a failure grade. That's what I would have done. And I would have made the newspaper, and the NAACP would probably have shown up because I was picking on him.
I did make the newspaper.
Okay.
Okay, so my wife and I went to Albertsons, and we parked in the parking lot, and we're about 100 feet out from the door, and we're as we get out of the door, it's a summer day, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, probably about 80 degrees, and there's these two black kids dressed in basketball clothes. They have these shorts that they actually go down to your knees, and they're about 7 feet tall, and they have their pants down so the crack of their butt is vivid. Mm-hmm. And I looked at them, and they're walking, and they have this very furtive look on their face in the
Hey, hold that thought. Okay. For the NAACP, if you decide to call us, 866-582-9933. That's our number, 866-582-9933. Class, before we continue, I just want to make sure that we are not picking on people who are of color because of color. I'm just talking about a story that reflects problems and that we have in our school systems. And some of the people who had their pants falling down in the hallways that I would hand heavy things to and ask them to carry them were white. They were white. So it's not just black people that we're talking about. However, this one case of this one particular student was. Yeah, let me say one other thing. I had a black girl deliver her own baby in the bathroom of the high school and buried this newborn in the trash. And another student went into the girl's bathroom and heard this rustling around and called the teacher called the principal called the police. They locked down the school, and we were on the 11 o'clock news that night because this gal, this about 15-year-old, had immaculate conception, and she delivered her own baby. Another student, white student, was having this relationship with a 40-year-old teacher, and they were in my classroom talking one day, and I threw him out. I threw the teacher out, and they were white. So it's not just, we have all kinds of problems of all different races and origins and ethnicities and so forth. So I just wanted to share that. Please continue.
It's the people inside. Okay, so I said, as we walked by him, I said, boys, pull your pants up. I'd rather my wife look at my butt than yours. And he said something, F you honky or something like that, and I just, and I looked at him as I'm walking by. I said, you guys don't quite know where you are. We all carry guns up here, so don't start anything. And as we're going into the store, one of them said something, and I had no clue what he said. It was some drawl, something or other. And my wife, being a smartass, turns around and says, "I'm sorry, we only speak English." And then the nefarious F-U-B came out of his mouth. And at that point I said, I'm going to rip part of his anatomy off right now. And I turned around and I'm walking towards these two guys. And they're both 7 feet tall. I've got a Detonix 45 in the small of my back. I'm not even going to pull it. I don't need to. So as I'm getting up to them, out of nowhere comes 6 or 7 of these old white people and say, "Oh, don't do this. This poor misunderstood inner city youth. Don't do anything like that. That's disrespectful and intolerant." And I'm like, "Are you crazy?" So I said, "Screw it." And I walked into the store and I told the manager, I said, "You call the police right now because there's 2 black guys out there trolling for honkies. This is a game that they play." So I was in the store for about 15 minutes, and then we came out, and they weren't there anymore. And I said, "Well, all right." So we go home. Next day, I'm front page of the Coeur d'Alene Press. Racist incident in North Idaho, because remember, North Idaho is where all the races in the world are supposed to live, right? Well, everybody up here, the white supremacists. If you're white, you're a white supremacist if you live up here. So I'm reading the story. Well, those two got scared after I went in the store, and they left. They went directly to Red Lobster, and they went in there, and there's a circular bar in Red Lobster restaurant where they were sitting, and when you have your pants down around the crack of your butt and you sit down, it's like you're naked. So the manager asked them to leave. And they got loud and boisterous, and bouncers come, and they left. Then they went directly from there to Rustler's Roost, which is one of the oldest beef restaurants up here. And they were stopped at the door by a 55-year-old Mormon man who had his wife and 7 kids eating dinner there. This guy... I'm 6'2", 250, and I look like a midget compared to this guy. And all he did was say, "You boys go away." So instantly, it was a racist incident in North Idaho. And it turned out these two guys had been imported from Oakland by the North Idaho College for their basketball team. Because, as you know, white men can't jump. So they've got to get they went down there to be diverse and got these two and paid their way up and gave them free college and all of that stuff. They lasted about 6 months, and it was all everybody's fault except theirs. So I just had to tell you that. By the way, we were talking about something yesterday, and I just happened to turn left and look at my bookcase here, and I found this book, Solar Power Your Home for Dummies.
Maybe I should read that. I should probably read that.
You're telling You're putting up solar power in your house.
Right after the broadcast today. Between 11 o'clock today and 4 o'clock, I'm going to be installing the 8 more solar panels. They weigh about 81 pounds apiece, and it's a real challenge in the wind.
Oh my God!
Putting these up on. And what we do is we got a backhoe, and we stand in the bucket of the backhoe to get up to the second level of these panels, and then we bolt them in place. But it takes 3 of us to do it.
We got to do something because we talked about this also. We had time talking about it today. Forest fires. Yeah,
let's do it.
You called me some weeks ago, and you wanted me to be in the show, and I was coughing and gagging. I said, "There's no way, man. I can't even see the end of my street here. The forest fires are so bad." We had all through California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, straight up British Columbia into Alaska, there were over 1,400 forest fires. Montana lost over 1.4 million acres because of these forest fires. Now, what you're not hearing is what's been causing these things. You'll hear, lightning strikes, lightning strikes, lightning strikes. Except we don't have lightning. We haven't had any. The majority of these, via my Department of Homeland Security briefings that I get every day, they think are arson. They think are arson. And now you've heard of the forest fires that are happening down in the Bay Area, around the winery country, in Napa and Sonoma area, arson. And they're not saying it. They did catch one guy who's a criminal alien, has been deported like 22 times, and he had started one of the fires. But these fires, they're somebody's setting them, and we're not going to catch them all. So everybody has to be prepared to fight fires or to defend your house if you can. And Vinny and I were talking about up here, some of the guys, like the school right down the street from me. They have a law in Idaho, you have to have sprinklers on the roof of your schools. On the roof. They've got 2-inch iron pipe traversing the roofs of all the schools up here, and then they have these impulse sprinklers up there. So if there's a fire, you just simply turn a valve, and now you're watering your whole roof. And there are people that are installing these up here. It was a big thing about 20 years ago, and then a lot of Californians moved up because they stopped doing it because it didn't look good on their house. So, but people are doing it again now. And on the farm, we've got, of course, a lot of old farms up here. They actually, a lot of farmers have separate wells that they use to fight fires with. And they have 2 to 3 inch hose and they have the standard brass, fully adjustable nozzles on them that fire departments use. You know what I'm talking about? The adjustable
Absolutely.
handle ones that
I bought some. Yeah, I bought some years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to most fire departments. You call them and say, look, what do you guys do with your old hoses? Because by federal law, they can't use hoses, I don't remember what it is, for too long. And then they get rid of them. You can pick those hoses up. You can buy them. And if you have the power, you can run them. But there's so many things people don't do. The brush, around your house.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this, because what we've done here at our house, we're concerned about fires. And you can call them wildfires, you can call them induced fires, you can call them whatever you want. Arson, terrorism, but they happen. Carelessness, recklessness. Well, around here, what we've done is we've installed some underground hydrants. And what that means is the piping is underground, and they come up to these hydrants that have a handle above ground, and you can attach a garden hose. So we have 100 to 120 foot long garden hoses with 5-inch brass nozzles attached to every one. And the idea, and even inside the house, so that if there's a fire, we can hopefully put it out before it gets large enough to not be able to put it out. So that's what we do. We're very proactive about it. And not only that, we bought a bulldozer and a backhoe. Now, they're used and they're old. However, if there's a big fire, we can take that bulldozer and clear a path, a fire break if we need to. And the same thing with the backhoe. And those are diesel-powered, and they're less likely to catch on fire than a gasoline-powered one. So we are maintaining fire breaks, and we are proactive with having hoses and nozzles to put them out, even inside the house. Now, one thing you need to think about, class, is that, if you have a garden hose and it's outside, and you have a little bit of water, and it only takes maybe an ounce of water in the garden hose, and it will go to the low point. If you've got it coiled up, it can go to the low point if it's on a slope, and that can freeze. And if that freezes, you won't get any water through that hose. So what we do is we take the garden hoses when it's warm out, and we stretch them so they run downhill, and we let all the water run out of them. And then we coil them up very carefully into a loop the size of a hula hoop, and then we put them inside so that they are not going to freeze. So that if we have to, some of them, not all of them, some are outside, but they're all drained from water so that they won't have any frozen ice in them. And the reason is, if we need it, we don't have time to mess around with hose being clogged up with ice. And you can use that to put out your fire. So that's what we do.
People don't think about that the ice freezes inside the hose. There's stories of homeowners lost their house because they couldn't get water out of their hose.
We're going into a commercial break, and we'll talk a little bit more about fires. And I got to tell you, class, you can prepare. You can be all ready, but a fire coming your way, you may not be able to stop it. So I want to talk a little bit more about the horrors and the frightening that goes on with fires. Kurt Wilson's with us. And if you'd like to go to his website, armchairsurvivalist.com, armchairsurvivalist.com. And by the way, if you're interested in a really great cough syrup, Old Indian Wild Cherry Bark Syrup, and you can get that right on the website, SE1.us, Kurt's website, and it absolutely is fabulous. And how do I know? Because I have it. Kurt sent it to me. And thank you, Kurt, for doing that. So we're talking about fires. It's really terrifying. If a fire's coming your way, if it's a small fire, maybe you can put it out. If not, you may need to leave. And let's talk about that. So you were inhaling smoke, and it was pretty terrifying, and you had masks, and you were prepared, and you've got everything all ready to go. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that?
Smoke will kill you, okay? And people don't know. I trained for a firefighter. I fought fires aboard ship and in the woods. It can kill you. Breathing smoke can kill you. We have masks, and just as an aside there, we have N95 masks. I got about 8,000 of them at the shop, and we were selling the heck out of them. We're shipping them all over the country now. But I bought a closeout from a guy. So you need to have masks. You really, I don't care who you are, where you live, you have to have masks because you don't know when the smoke's going to hit. The largest brush fire in history of the world happened about 10 years ago in the Gobi Desert in China. Guess where the smoke ended up? And the ash ended up in North Idaho, all through the northern area.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, people were astounded on that. And the ash is so fine that anybody with upper respiratory problems ended up in the hospital. But we had masks, so we didn't have to worry about it. But I'm telling you, I don't care what fire you're in, smoke will kill you. So you want to be 3 feet or less from the ground. If there's a fire and you can't get out, you drop. You get down. You get under something. You get in a swimming pool. You get in something that will protect you and you can breathe. The breathing is what kills most people. It's not the fire. And that's the important thing. You have to understand that you can escape most fires simply running, driving away, going away, but you have to be able to breathe. As soon as your breathing is compromised, you become lightheaded and fuzzy, and you fall to the ground. I've been in fires in houses where I was a first responder, and there were people standing and wandering around in the house, and I kicked their feet out from under them. They fell to the ground, and I drug them out. But people don't understand it. Their first thought is get out, but they can't see, you can't hear, you can't tell what's going on because your senses are being numbed. So you have to have masks. You have to have some way to protect yourself. Simple N95 particulate masks would do just fine. Mm-hmm. But and a fire is going to happen in anything. It can happen anywhere. You get a forest fire, heat. Okay, fireproof safe. I was a gunsmith for 25 years. Fireproof safe. I had a guy come to me with 25 guns, all stainless steel, and everything had melted on them. I said, I thought they were in a fireproof safe. And he said, yeah, but it gets hot. It doesn't burn. And that's the thing. Mm-hmm. So the heat will affect things, and the heat alone will put off toxins inside your house. People say, yeah, I have a concrete house. I have tile roofs. My house isn't going to burn. But the house gets hot if there's a fire outside. And things inside will spontaneously combust and start. So you really have to do some concentrated thinking. Keep your house, the area around it, clear of brush. Keep it clear of trees that could catch fire and fall on your house. Keep the area clean. I mean, it's just common sense. We can talk more about that later.
Yeah. Kurt Wilson's with us. Kurt, end of the broadcast. Thanks so much for spending 2 hours of your time with us. And arson is really a bad thing. And if you can stop a small fire from getting to be a big one, that's a great way to go. And the masks, we have them here. That's what we have here on the farm. We have respirators. Why? I'll tell you what, class, take a flashlight tonight when it's dark and aim it anywhere outside, and you won't believe how much dust is in the air.